Good evening. I am Assad Shoman.
And I'm Dennis Jones.
Both from the Society for the Promotion of Education and Research. And this is the program SPEAR on Target, a call-in radio program that is aired every other Wednesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. on Belize Radio 1 and televised for later TV transmission. Our subject for tonight is corruption. And we ask the question, is corruption becoming respectable? Our guests tonight are Louis Sylvester, a former minister in PUP governments from about 1957 as a sort of quasi-minister through the different constitutional changes until 1984, and Mr. Hubert Elrington, who was a minister in a UDP government from late 1984 until 1989. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. I would like to say a few words of caution to our listeners who intend to call in this evening, since this is a very delicate subject and we have to be careful that we don't infringe on libel laws. So that I will ask any potential listeners to be very careful about not mentioning names or accusing individuals of any type of corruption, but basing your questions on sort of principles, and if need be on events, but without mentioning any names. Gentlemen, I would first of all start by thanking you very much for coming on the show. I really think it is a sign of courage on both of your parts. And I might mention here that we tried hard to get other persons to come on the show, and most people were reluctant to face the public on this subject. And so I repeat, I want to thank you all for coming. Now, both of you in your time as members, as ministers, were accused of corruption. Now, we are not here to go into any of your personal records or that of anybody, or either to accuse or defend, but we want to try and sort of set the parameters, first of all, as to what you would consider corruption. I mean, to what point can a minister or a public servant or somebody holding a position of trust go before crossing that line that would make him or her be accused of corruption? In other words, we see corruption as a sort of abuse of an office for purpose of personal enrichment. But how would you see it? Starting with you, Louis, how would you sort of define corruption within these terms?
Well, corruption is hard to define. According to the newspapers, everybody is corrupted. And you can't just go by what the newspapers say, because they're groundless. If you have good, solid facts on these matters, then they're the legal way to go. But as long as anybody is in government, and politically is not liked by certain elements, obviously, the fastest way is to accuse him of corruption.
But what do people mean when they say that somebody is corrupt? What is the action?
Well, there can be a lot of corruptions, different ways of corrupting the person, socially, monetary-wise, various ways of corruption.
Okay. How would you define it, Hubert?
Well, I think I would simply rely on the legal definition of corruption. And that is where a person holds a public office. And it does not have to be a public office, but where a person holds an office. And where, in the course of that office, he either by himself or in association with others offer someone a bribe or some benefit to induce that person to do something that is improper, which would confer an advantage on him or on some other person on whom he would like to see that advantage conferred. And it can be monetary as well as in terms of giving that person gifts and things like that. The reverse of that is also true, where the gift is given to him, or where he gives the gift So it's a question of a situation where the giver can be corrupt and the receiver is also corrupt. And the size of the inducement is not relevant. It can be a penny. If you accept it improperly for either doing or refraining from doing an act which you are duty-bound to do, then you would have acted in a corrupt manner. And the law provides that people that do that ought to be imprisoned for either a maximum of 2 years or on indictment in special circumstances for a period of 7 years.
Okay, let me just say a word here to our listeners that we'll be asking them to refrain from calling for a few minutes so that we can sort of ground this conversation a little bit among ourselves. And then maybe after about 15 minutes we'll say that we're receiving calls, and then we'll open the phones to the public callers. You were going to say something?
There's one other area that I'd like to have your comment on, and this is where people would, in public offices, use that office to ensure that their friends or families get an unfair advantage by using the powers of their office to confer special privileges on a friend or family. Would you consider this to be a corrupt practice?
Well, that is a little bit more difficult. I think the test would be whether the person required somebody to use the office in such a way as to confer a benefit on another person, where that other person would not have been entitled to that benefit, and where there is some reward involved, some inducement. The act is very, very, very broad. It's almost a sweeping act.
There must be a reward.
It's chapter 96 of the laws of Belize, and it is an exceedingly wide and sweeping act. And
That law applies to which persons, Hubert?
It applies basically to people who are dealing with employees of the government, officers of the Crown, anybody who gets a salary from the Crown. Or the government.
Private firms, for example.
If the private firm is dealing with the government and offers an inducement, or in return for some benefit, confers a benefit on a member of the government, or it may be there is an intermediary. For example, I know a minister, and I go to him and say, look, I want you to allow such and such a person to get a contract. And if that negotiation is done and the contract is awarded, then that private individual who obtains, who acts in such a way as to induce the minister to give that contract, if he is given something by the contractor, then it is presumed by law that he has obtained that something corruptly, and the duty is then on him to prove that he was not corrupt in receiving it.
Would that apply also
So
to the
it
minister?
puts-
For example, if he gives some of it to the minister,
It applies to all of them.
There's a
All-
presumption of guilt, in other words.
All of them that are involved in taking or in giving.
There is a presumption
They are
of guilt.
all,
in a sense.
especially in cases of award of government contracts, there is a serious presumption that that act of taking was a corrupt act, and that the duty is then on the person taking or receiving to prove that the taking or the receiving was not corrupt.
Okay, Hubert, you've been in this sort of watching politics or in it
Yes.
for a very long time. The sort of thing you're talking about, do you think it happens? Does it happen a lot? Is it a common practice in Belize?
I would say that during the course of my career as a lawyer, as a civil servant, and as a minister of government, people in Belize seem to be very knowledgeable, business people. I don't know if it's by practice or what, but they appear to be knowledgeable as to who they ought to approach.
Were you ever approached?
I was never approached by
What about
anyone.
the same question. Do these things happen, the things that Hubert described? Do they happen, and how often, and were you ever approached?
Well, I can't say that it does happen, because up to now there's no proof on anybody that it happens, except according to the newspapers,
Which is
that comes out and attack the various government ministers on those charges, but nothing has been proven.
Were you
So
ever
where do you go
approached?
from there?
Did anybody ever try to bribe you to get something done?
Or maybe for a drink, yeah.
Hubert, since there is this kind of almost presumption of guilt on the part of the law, once certain things happen,
Yes.
right? And since these things we assume do happen to some degree, how come nobody has ever gone to court, or nobody has ever had to defend?
I suppose this is one of the reasons why I'm often categorized as being kind of far out or even radical in my views. If you are going to enforce a law, you have got to ensure that the prosecution mechanism exists. You have also got to ensure that the evidence gathering mechanism exists. It all begins with the will or the desire to stamp out corruption.
And that will has not been there in government over the years.
No. If you noticed, while the United Democratic Party was in government, there was no one who could say, I am the contractor for the Ministry of so-and-so. There was absolutely no individual that could say that he has been given this contract or that contract or the other contract by any of the particular ministries of the UDP government. On the return of the PUP, there has been a revival of all the old contractors.
You mean that there were new contractors during the UDP time?
In other words, if we were doing, for example, roadworks, which required trucking, it was never put in the hand of a trucking contractor. The trucks were told, or the truck owners were told, 35 cents a yard per mile. Whether you like it or whether you don't like it is hardly the point. You bring your truck, you load it, you run it, and at the end of the day, you go to the Ministry of Works and they pay you. There was no contractor. We did not work with contractors in that sense. If you notice, there has been a revival of contractors in the Ministry of Works, in the other ministries of government. I even heard of a case the other day where a butcher was contracted to go and purchase $1 million worth of heavy-duty machinery. Not cows or pigs, but heavy-duty machinery. How can a butcher be sent to do that?
Which brings us to a point.
Yeah, but
I had a review done of the period just before the 1984 elections.
Yes.
And you were one of the most vocal critics of the then party in power, the PUP.
Yeah.
And you used the Auditor General's report
Yes.
to charge that they were corrupt.
Yes.
How do you explain not taking action against that government when you were the Attorney General?
Okay. I felt very strongly, because I was in the judiciary. I was one of the prosecutors in the Supreme Court every day that was prosecuting. I was familiar with the system. And at a certain point, I came to the conclusion that we had a very, very, very corrupt system in this country, and that we ought to root it out. And as soon as I became Attorney General, you will notice that quite a number of judges were removed. A couple of magistrates were removed from the bench. And I set up the machinery to prosecute even former ministers of government. And then an amnesty was declared.
By whom?
By the party. In other words, it was said to me, you cannot witch hunt. My position was, giving justice where justice is due is not witch hunting. A clear distinction must be made between setting up the machinery to prosecute a man who has broken the law. And I am saying to the Attorney General tonight, do the same thing. If you do the same thing, whoever you find has been guilty of an infraction of the law, whether it is I or whether it is somebody else, it is your duty to do it, and do it.
You're sending a message to Glenn.
That is it.
All right, tell me something. When you were Attorney General then, and you were doing this preparatory work before you say your party stopped you, did you find any evidence against particular ministers?
There is abundance of evidence.
There is evidence.
There is an abundance of evidence. In the auditor's report, we had a situation where the auditor reported that the minister was actually stealing the diesel and reselling it.
No, shouldn't you have insisted as Attorney General to carry out the law? And if you were stopped from doing it, wasn't it your duty to resign? Or what? I mean,
there is a question.
You felt strongly about this.
There is a question of individual wisdom and collective wisdom. And there is a time when collective wisdom ought to prevail over individual wisdom.
You think you were right not to prosecute him? Yeah?
And there is a, sometimes in the life of a nation, healing the nation, looking to build the nation, is more important than to create divisions within the nation. But I do feel, and I do feel strongly, that the time must come when, like other advanced countries have done, special machinery is set up so that it is possible to entrap.
But let me ask you something here. Sorry to interrupt you, but
to collect evidence, let me correct that, not to entrap, but to collect evidence on those who insist on using the government service to become rich. The evidence of corruption or not corruption is the standard of living of the civil servants and the ministers.
okay, but let me just press you on the point.
$28,000 a year cannot buy a $500,000 house. It's not possible.
Okay, let me press you on the point.
Yeah, but they can go to the bank, you know.
I want to come back to that thing.
The bank does not lend anybody who makes $28,000 a year $500,000.
I want to come back to that thing about that kind of obvious enrichment, right?
Yeah.
But first, let me catch you on that point. Let me try to be clear what you're saying. That thing about when you were able to prosecute, but you were told don't witch hunt.
Yeah.
And in effect, you're saying, in a sense, it was wise to do that to carry out a period of healing. Now,
I'm not saying it was wise. I am saying I had to weigh. You asked me why didn't I resign. I said I had to weigh
individual wisdom against collective wisdom.
Against the collective wisdom of my colleagues.
Right, but what I'm trying to get at is, don't you think that is a way of saying that successive governments should do the same, right? In other words, we didn't touch you, so when you get into office, please don't touch us. And there's an unspoken understanding that this won't happen, and that in fact maybe what motivated your party to take that position was the fear that if they were corrupt during that time.
Had I thought that that was the motivating factor, I would have resigned. It was precisely because I felt that there was a genuine desire to say, okay, let's, by our example, set certain standards.
But those standards were not in fact set, were they?
And let us proceed from there with the clear understanding that in the future we are going to hold the line.
But you didn't.
Well, as far as I am concerned, That is exactly what was
You didn't have
done.
any evidence of corruption against any of your fellow ministers?
There was nothing, not one single bit of evidence came into the Attorney General's ministry while I was there, which said that any of our ministers was dealing corruptly. And I will tell you the extent to which...
Did you try to get that evidence?
I'll tell you the
accusations were
extent
made?
to which the cabinet of the UDP went. And I'm not talking here as a member of the UDP organization. I'm talking here as Hubert Elrington, the individual, and the attorney at law. But our cabinet contemplated giving the police powers to stop our ministers and search their vehicles.
Why didn't they do it?
Because it was not carried.
Okay.
And it was not carried for this reason, that the whole of our society rests on the structure of authority. And to do that would have undermined the whole base of that pyramid of authority. So what we would have gained from it would have been nothing in comparison with what we would have lost.
Okay.
Because no society can exist without the concept of authority.
All right, let me interrupt you here to say to our radio listeners that I think enough time has passed and that we are opening the phone lines and that anybody who wants to call in, the number is 75623. You're listening to Spare on Target, and our guests for tonight are Louis Sylvester and Hubert Elrington, and the subject is corruption. Is corruption becoming respectable? And you're all invited to call in at 75623.
Mr. Sylvester.
Yes.
Over the years, you have heard countless allegations made against ministers. What has been your experience with governments in following up on these allegations and trying to bring whatever evidence there is to light? What has been your experience?
Well, my experience is that there are different newspapers in the country, right, belonging to different political parties. And a lot of them have been attacks on the individual ministers, whether it's PUP ministers or UDP ministers, on the basis of corruption. Right? But I have never seen any facts presented against anybody on it.
But following on a
So
comment...
let's take a call. We have a caller here now. Is this thing working? Is there a... Well, I'm pressing knobs and nothing is happening. We apparently have a caller on the line, but the machine here seems to have
I wonder if it's
rebelled.
intentional.
Okay, let's see what they can do about this machine while we proceed. No, I wanted to ask you a question, Louis, because I think this law, which I'm going to refer to now, which is the National Assembly Code of Ethics Ordinance, right, was enacted while you were a Minister of Government.
Yeah.
As I understand it, sort of briefly summarizing it, whenever somebody becomes a member of either the House of Representatives or of the Senate, that person has to make a statutory declaration of assets and liabilities,
yeah.
right?
That's right.
And then every year after that as well.
Yeah.
And that includes, for example, a gift of anything over $300 that the person received. It includes not only him or herself, but also spouse and children.
That's right, yeah.
And then there is an integrity commission that is established,
That's right.
which is an independent body, right?
It was run by the chairman, who was the Chief Justice.
Okay, it can call for further particulars
That's
from
right.
the members. It can declare that it is unsatisfied with what the members have declared.
That's
It
right.
can go so far as to report that they feel that the member is, so to speak, guilty of unlawful withholding or is willfully misleading the Integrity Commission and so on. It can conduct inquiries and call
right.
witnesses on the road and
Right.
all of that, right?
Yeah.
And then if the person is found guilty, the person can be fined $2,000 or sent to prison for 1 year. Now that is a thing that presumably has been operating, right? And yet here we have Hubert giving an example. I don't know if he was referring to a member of the House, of somebody who on a $28,000 a year salary gets a huge house. So that's an additional asset that that person got in the course of being in the Assembly. Why hasn't this thing been working to spot such cases and at least to investigate and to... Is this an operating law or not?
Like
Does it not work?
I said, Not because, well, everything is valuation, right? If a person puts up a house, the opposition says $500,000. Maybe the house costs the guy $150,000.
Shouldn't this integrity commission be looking into that? And has it been doing that?
Well, obviously, he would have had to go to the bank. Their banks are wrong. I mean, not because you're a government minister, that privilege is denied you.
Has this law worked, in your opinion?
Of course it does, because the Integrity Commission have always been inquiring. Other members have told me of different things which are more information they want and the individual.
We have a caller on the line, I think. Let's hear. Hello, caller, you're on the line.
Yes, hello, Mr. Shoman. Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Yes, I'm listening to the program, and I must say I'm a little disappointed in hearing our political leaders, or a couple of our political leaders, seem to admit that there is a situation where the two parties that run for politics in Belize have a very convenient arrangement when it comes to question of either or the other having or the corruption business with either of the other. And as a voting member of the public, when I look towards my leaders to see good by us in terms of looking after our needs and spending our monies correctly and that sort of thing, I'm very disappointed to hear leaders say that actual evidence was uprooted some 5 years ago and nothing was done about it. I think the time has come when we in Belize, I think where most people expect that if there is provable or if there is evidence of corruption, no matter who that person is, if the small man can be corrupted for stealing money from a neighbor or for shoplifting and that sort of thing, then definitely our leaders, if there is evidence that there is corruption, they should be prosecuted by the law as the law allows. I think there should be no question at all of they're not serving us any at all, the public I'm talking about, by when they say that they want reconciliation and that sort of thing, or they look at it as witch hunting. I don't think the public on a whole would view prosecution of a corrupt minister as witch hunting. I think the public would actually look forward to that sort of thing happening for a change.
Okay, Hubert, a listener disappointed in this amnesty of your party. What is your response to that?
Well, that is the right of the listener to be disappointed.
Do you agree with the point of view expressed?
I am saying that at the time the amnesty was declared, and it was made clear, it was not that the party then in government said that there was no evidence.
Okay, sorry.
The party simply said, because my colleague here, Mr. Sylvester, will remember that at the meeting, the first meeting at Ambergiski, immediately after I was appointed as Attorney General, I declared a public intention to proceed with prosecuting one or two ministers right away, former ministers. So he knows what my intention was.
Okay, no, amnesty was declared. Amnesty was declared, and sometime later, you recall that famous public meeting around the time after the house of the Deputy Prime Minister, the then Deputy Prime Minister, was burnt down. In effect, that amnesty was removed, and it was said, all right, no holds barred. Now, if you're guilty of anything, we're going for you. We're going to apply the law very strictly, especially to PUPs, etc. Why then, at that time, your party loosed your hands? Why didn't you take the action then?
Okay.
You had lost the evidence? It was too late?
I think that it was meant that as from that day, whatever occurred, in other words, we were not saying that we were going to go back and remove the amnesty. But as from that date forward, whatever came to our notice would be dealt with.
I don't know if other members of the public will share this with me, but this is the first time I'm hearing about this so-called amnesty. I never heard it announced. I never knew that it had happened. Amnesty. I don't know if everybody had ever heard of it, but you're telling me news now. I mean, it's good to hear you say it.
Part of it?
No witch hunting.
Yeah, well, I couldn't understand. They said that, but I couldn't see that would apply to people who are obviously.
He said that the day he took office, and after that you were saying that you were going to prosecute ministers in San Pedro. That was after he already took office, right? So this amnesty thing, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it certainly didn't make it known to the public. But what's your own view about the working of this Code of Ethics law? Do you think it really is working or not?
Well, let's look at the nature of corruption. Two corrupt people meet in a secluded area and make a deal. Do you think the man in the code of ethics room is going to become privy to that? You think either of them is going to disclose it to him? In other words, unless there is some machinery and some mechanism for evidence gathering, who can come and say, well, look, X or Y have in the last 10 months accumulated this vehicle, this house, this amount of bank account, and he has had so many properties abroad. Unless this is brought forward by people charged with that responsibility, it's going to be a waste of time in the long run.
But why didn't you do that when you were Attorney General? Because, I mean, the law provides for the Integrity Commission asking a member of the House or a minister, well, look, you have got this house since you became a minister. Your salary is 28,000.
And if he declares wrongly, he's in trouble.
And you didn't declare it or whatever.
Yeah.
So how did you get this? I mean, why is that?
Let me explain to you, and that's a valid question. And the answer to that is a simple one. We met a situation, and to some extent it still exists, where as Attorney General, and I think you were at one time Attorney General yourself.
That is correct. Yeah.
Where the whole mechanism that had been set up, in my opinion, had been intentionally dismantled. You know the old colonial mechanism when the Auditor General came in and you were shot, you go to jail? You remember that mechanism? Well, that mechanism that was set up there was dismantled for about 20 to 25 years, during a part of which you were the Attorney General. Not only that, we have a situation where at the present moment, the Solicitor General is a pensioned officer, so he's on contract. The Director of Public Prosecution, whose integrity should be above reproach, there should be absolutely no question at all, finds himself in the position that he ought not to be in, where he is not even confirmed in his office. The Chief Justice of this country is on contract.
We have a caller. Okay, forgive me, we have a caller here. Yes, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I said a couple comments. First of all, I'm amazed to understand that under the UDP, the Attorney General was in charge of prosecution. I don't understand, where was the role of the DPP? How can the Attorney General and his cabinet be determining that they will not prosecute certain people? Isn't this the function of the DPP?
What's your reply to that?
This is a classic misunderstanding of the legal setup in the country. It is for the Attorney General and the government to decide what the policy is going to be. We are not talking here about misunderstanding the law. And that is what you have in Belize. Is very, very common.
But what the caller is saying is
you
that
have
in effect
callers,
you stop the DPP from prosecuting.
You have callers and you have people out there who come up with a question like Jack coming out of the box.
I don't understand.
Hold on, let me just clarify.
Okay.
There's a question of policy. What the policy will be. The policy will be this. The mechanism will be that. Now, if you are talking about the role of the DPP, then you must check. I think it's Section 108 of the Constitution of Belize. I don't know if you're a legal man.
Yes, this is Amon Courtney.
Well, I'm not going to assist you any further. You must look at your law.
No. Hubert, with respect, I'm sure you will agree with me on this.
I can't understand
that the DPP's power of prosecution is absolutely and totally untrammeled.
But you are not reading.
The government cannot say to the DPP, prosecute A, prosecute B.
Have you read 108 of the Constitution?
I mean, let's not have jokes. Obviously, I've read it.
Well, it says that. As far as I'm saying. I think I have.
No, that is not my role here. Please, tonight. I am here as a sort of.
All right, another point.
I have the Constitution.
Facilitate a dialogue.
No, I think I agree with Mr. Courtney because
the
DPP has the powers to investigate and to make charges. That's the role of the DPP.
No Attorney General can stop him.
I don't see how.
Hubert, another point. Did I misunderstand you to say that you all were going to give permission to the police to stop ministers' vehicles under your administration? Am I to understand when the UDP was informed the police could not stop and search ministers' vehicles?
Let me.
You had a question, Hubert? Are you saying, in effect, that you were able to stop the police from stopping ministers? Don't they have that power anyhow?
We were going to go beyond that. We were going to say to them that as a matter of spot checking, we were going to be requesting them to do this.
Specifically for ministers?
So then you have doubts of the whole government?
Yes, why
would you do that?
check yourself?
It's
The UDP was reaching for a higher level of principle.
All right. Final
The
point.
UDP, no, and we want to go back to 108 of the Constitution, which says that except for the direction or except for the, I think it is direction of the Attorney General, the DPP shall not be answerable to anyone else. In other words, it's a qualified provision, you know. You seem to be think that it is unqualified. But it seems to me that the plain words of that section requires the DPP to act under the control of the Attorney General. That is our Constitution.
You want to make the final point?
I
Imam?
have a copy of the Constitution here.
Yeah, make it, please. Can you make the final point?
Yes, the final thing is the question of corruption. Hubert mentioned this fact about not being able to build a $500,000 house on a minister's salary. Is he aware of the allegation that there is one particular minister who acquired about between 5 and 7 houses in their term, and also a minister who built a hotel in the south of the country under their term?
Are you aware of this allegation?
I am saying, let's move beyond the point of allegation.
Yeah.
Let's get up the evidence gathering machinery, set up the machinery for prosecution, and let us prove our case. That's why we are lawyers.
All right, good.
Okay, thank you.
Good show.
Thank you, caller. Okay, I'm reminding our listeners
Can I
that
just
the
read this
number...
section for him?
The number to call is 75623. We don't want to get too bogged down in legalities. You see, we want to keep the show moving, because what I want to do now is move away from this focus on ministers, right? And ask the question whether corruption, as we know it, doesn't permeate throughout, all the ranks of government officers, right? Whether when the public meets with civil servants at different levels, they don't find corruption at various levels of the civil servants, of everything associated with government. For example, if there is a government department or a government institution that regularly has to purchase things, right? Food or clothing or drugs or linen or whatever, right, on a regular basis. I am told that there is a specific sort of steps that you need to take, and I won't hesitate to say this, because a lot of people know about it, that you have to take certain steps. What I have here is a sort of do-it-yourself kit for getting into this, what some people call a sort of underground established system, right, within the service. First of all, you have to contact somebody who is already involved in this, and that person will recommend you and introduce you to the right people. The right people you meet will be at a sort of mid-administrative level, right? They'll be the people who can make an order and certify that order, right? You negotiate with that person, usually for a sort of 10% of what you will be paid. You are the seller, in other words. They call it procurement, but it means buying, right? So you will be selling, and you negotiate with that person to give back that person about 10% of what you'll collect. But then, you have to take care of the people who are in the section in charge of preparing the vouchers, you see. Because a voucher can take a week to prepare, or it can take 2 months to prepare. So to speed up that process, you have to sort of give that person something. It depends, if the amount is...
In other words, you're saying
$10,000.
the procurement system, the civil servants, the people in the pipeline, you're saying that these people and the merchants are all corrupt.
Not
That's
all.
what you're
of
saying.
course not all. Of course
Most
not.
of them.
I'm saying that this is a system that is enforced and has been enforced for
When
a long
you were
time.
in government, was it
It's been
enforced
there.
when you were
It's
in
been
government?
for a long time. It's been going on for a
been
long
there,
time. It's
to
still
your
going on.
knowledge.
It's
Yeah,
still going on.
But how
All
true?
right?
But
So
how
now-
true are those things?
But after that,
How
it's
true are
true,
those
it's true.
things?
A lot of people know it's true. You know it's true. After
how
that
true
happens, even when you get the voucher prepared, right, you still have to go to another level where, you know, somebody will certify it. And there you have to give a little something to. Eventually it gets to the accountant who gives the final certification. And the accountant will say, well, so where did they get? And you could tell him, well, I don't give so. You say, yeah, but I mean, well, how about me, right? So you have to pass something there. And then, you know, it goes on, and you have to give little
No,
bits
so
here and there.
I think.
And then there is a big leap you make when, beyond all that, at the higher level, at the level of a director or a PS or a minister, they say, well, look, it's time that I get something too, you know? These things are things that happen. The things that happen.
Yeah, but I don't think.
And why can't we do anything about it? Why can't we stop
Well,
it?
first of all, I don't believe all those things happen.
You don't.
No, I don't believe so. I think that civil servants have been doing a very good job on the salaries that they are getting.
I'm not disputing that. I'm not
Very good
disputing
job.
that. But why is it that your party, for example, when in opposition, accused this government of so many, I mean, you did some research,
Yeah,
right?
we
You
did.
found that in almost every issue of the Belize Times leading up to the election, there was allegations. Definite allegations of corruption.
Well,
The same thing, the Pulse, definite allegations of corruption against the PUP. Are both of them lying? Are they just falsehoods? That both
well, I
parties
mean,
have been spreading against each other?
where's the proof? I mean, I know a lot of people that
well,
get
then you're
vouchers
saying-
and they have not, they haven't mentioned anything about giving any 10% for the civil service work. A voucher might take a couple days in preparing, certainly. But I mean, I don't think that anybody has to pay for,
Okay,
pay
we
for
have a
getting a
call.
voucher. No, man, no.
Okay, we have a caller. Let's hear what they say. Hello, yes, caller.
Hello, I'm directing my question to Mr. Elrington
Yes,
Yes.
please.
concerning corruption on his part. Okay?
Yeah.
He used his office, right, as a minister. He came up, okay, I can say that he was corrupted on his part, right, because I know somebody who he had locked up for over 13 hours because he stated that that person followed him. So what he did, he got the police, got this person arrested, they took him to the police lockup, they locked him up, went down there, found out what was the problem. They didn't have any charge to put on the man. He was in there over 13 hours. I think what Mr. Elrington should have done was made an apology to that person because he claimed the person was following him while he was parked on the Northern Highway.
But listen, forgive me, what does this have to do with the subject we're talking about? The
Corruption is corruption. He's using his office to have the police have this person arrested and detained without a cause.
I see. So you're
So
extending it.
he couldn't produce any cause, so they automatically let the person go after detaining him for over 13 hours.
Okay, you want to make any response to that?
Yes. As a minister of government, security is one of our main concerns. And if somebody presumes to be following me around, I don't know for what reason, then it is my duty to go and report the matter to the police. It is then for the police to ask him why he was in fact following me around. And this person turned out to be quite an old criminal, as a matter of fact. So this is not somebody that I have any intention of apologizing to now or at any other time.
You don't regard that sort of act as
No,
in any way
that
corrupt?
is a question that is for my own personal
Your own
security. I don't go about following people around. And if
Okay.
somebody come following me even now,
You will
I
try
am
and do
going
something
to
about
take
it.
some action against it. We live in a very criminal kind of society, and we have to be very careful what we are doing, you know.
Okay, the number to call is 75623.
I want to go back to Mr. Sylvester's reluctance to deal with the allegations being made by parties in opposition. Are you saying then that all these allegations are groundless and shouldn't be taken seriously?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the fact of the matter is, as it stands up to this present moment, is that the government who is in power, it's the PUP who is in power, the UDP is charging all type of corruption, and vice versa. Right? But it's nothing, no proof have come.
Okay, we have a caller here. Yes, yes, caller, you're on the air. Well, you're no longer on the air. Okay, the lines are open again. The number is 75623.
What I'm saying is that because a person becomes a minister of government, that he's denied anything that the citizen of a country can get. He stands a better chance of getting a loan from the bank to build his house or business or something like that, or, you know, indirectly.
Well, Hubert disagrees. He says no bank will lend you that kind of money when you're only earning $28,000.
I don't know. I mean, it's a hypothetical figure.
Let me...
You were just saying he built a house and he said the house value $500,000. I'm not saying it value
You believe that corruption was taking place?
Value $100,000.
Okay, sorry. Let's give the callers a chance here. Yes, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, comment was made a while ago about public officers and the procurement system.
Right.
As a public officer in middle management, I would like to make some corrections there.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, during the UDP term of office, the ministers, they used to do their own ordering. And Mr. Elrington could bear with us. The minister would give a list of the stores you have to buy from. So the public officer had nothing to do with the procurement.
So in that case, the minister himself said, you buy this from that store.
Exactly so. And if you go against that, then you are in for trouble.
Now that sounds like an element of open corruption being used by the minister there, Hubert. Well, how do you respond to that? Is that the way you should run a government or what?
Well, you see, here again, what sounds to be a perfectly innocent statement turns out to be maybe the root of the problem. Because, for example, when we went into government, we found that there was a little office on Queen Street that was buying all of government trucks, all of government Caterpillar parts, all of government, I mean, millions and millions of dollars worth of orders were being placed with particular stores to the point, little offices here and there in the wall. People who only have a telephone and a desk was getting millions of dollars worth of government contract under the PUP. And we say, no, that cannot be done.
But you then said the minister will say,
we suspected that these were not above board. And we then therefore prepared a list. And we say these people appear to be reputable merchants. These people appear to be bona fide traders. And when you want to buy, you buy from them.
Isn't that open to corruption? And isn't it also a form of political victimization?
We did not say you have to buy from A or you have to buy from B. We said you have a whole list now to choose from. You don't need any longer to go to Mr. So-and-so who has a little office and a desk and a telephone and give him $1 million.
But the list is restricted. It doesn't include everybody. Is that right?
Only people who we honestly felt,
consider to be reputable.
Was honestly felt that only people who had been dealing over long periods of time in such a way that others could not even get an order, that these people ought to be left off the list. But otherwise, everybody was included.
There's a caller. Let's hear. Yes, caller, you're on there.
Yes, Mr. Elrington.
Yes.
Given a system where of electing our representatives that we have, where you can get anybody becoming a minister,
yes,
who has probably a very, very poor background,
yeah,
and you propel him suddenly into a position of prominence, and he's paid $28,000. He doesn't have an established law firm that gives him extra income, let's say. How would you prevent him from accepting, or how would you prevent him from taking some gift that might be offered to him when he has to now circle in an area where he needs to be prominent, dignified, etc., and his salary after taxes is so small? How would we do that?
Good. The thing to do is not
become a lawyer.
The thing to do is do not associate outside of your economic bracket. That is the thing to do. And that is the thing that I think is, at least in my case, it's patently clear that my associates have remained the same.
Yeah,
my circles have remained the same.
Those who are not lawyers.
And let me tell you something. There are some lawyers who have become rich overnight. And they are very successful lawyers in this country who win practically every criminal case that you put before them, who have not gotten rich by their practice. So it is not the practice which have made quite a number of the very rich ones rich, in my view.
This brings us to the question. Lately, we've been looking at the whole matter of public officers and conflict of interest as a part of the whole corruption that exists in Belize. What do you think of ministers who are involved in business deals, or their firms are involved in business deals, which by virtue of their ministerial position, they can influence the outcome of those deals? What is your view on that? I'm sure it happened in both administrations. Give us your views.
Well, my position is that the Code of Ethics require you to declare an interest if you're going to be dealing with your firm or with your office. But that the best thing is not to deal with it at all. That is what I did. I am sure that when you look through the records, you will see that Elrington's firm was sent nothing by Elrington at no time at all. It's the same way I noticed that they were making up a list of who borrowed loans. Don't loan anybody any. I didn't borrow any from the bank. I didn't borrow from DFC. I didn't borrow from Recondev. I didn't build any house for myself, despite what the papers say. I am still renting and paying my $500 a month. The important thing is that you can retain your integrity if you want to.
And
that is why I can come here and say tonight, we should apply the rules. In relation to the civil servants, I am not making any comments on that. That they have a system where you add on a percentage.
I'm not saying it's universal.
Mr. Shoman says that he has some knowledge of this. I am saying that it is possible, but I am not going to comment on that tonight. All I can say is that the problem is that in Belize, the financial rules and regulations are not laws.
Okay, but Hubert, the question...
Let me finish.
Okay.
The financial rules and regulations are not laws. The government is not bound to follow them. And if they break them, they do not commit a crime.
You think we should change that?
We need to make those rules and regulation laws, so that when you break them, you pay the price.
And you're so recommending to the Attorney General now?
Mr. Sylvester, what's your view of that situation?
Which one?
The whole matter of ministers, their firms.
Well, I think there's a unwritten law and understanding in any government that if you are a minister in charge of a ministry that will deal with a firm which you might have shares in, that you shouldn't deal with it.
Yeah, because Hubert, I don't think we were talking about you specifically, right? But let's say a hypothetical you. You are a lawyer, you're in government, your firm, you're not working in the firm as such, but it continues, right? And by virtue of you being a minister, certain business, big business, goes to your firm, and your firm makes big money, which you will naturally be a part of, even though you're not working there yourself. Is that corrupt in your view or not? That by virtue of the fact of you being a minister, business goes, especially it happens with legal firms, of course, to your firm. Do you think that's corrupt or not? Well,
in the case of company law, which is governed, and trust law, which are governed by very strict codes, a system is established where a lawyer who is also a trustee or a lawyer who is also a director of a company, when his firm is getting business from that company, he must observe certain procedure. If those procedures were in fact observed, then the public interest, the interest of the shareholders,